Today, we're talking about music school auditions. Today's a throwback to some content that I posted on my own personal YouTube channel that's done pretty well, and I think it's topical. It's October. People are thinking about applying to music school, creating lives in music, and I wanted to post a couple of thoughts that I had about creating, number one, a great pre-screening tape and some audition considerations for going to music school. So if you are someone or know someone that is thinking about going to music school, wants to find out more about going to music school, making a pre-screening tape, or doing an audition to get into a great music school, this episode is going to be for you. Pass it along. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time on Create, Connect, Repeat.
Welcome back to video blog number 3 for polyphonic.org. Today I wanted to take the chance to talk a little bit about what's on a lot of people's mind. I've been getting a bunch of questions recently from some students about applying to college and some of the procedures that go into that. So the biggest question I think that I've been getting a lot is about grades on both standardized tests like the SAT and the ACT, and then just their overall GPA from high school. And in my experience with colleges and music schools and conservatories, the audition component is really, really important. And as long as your grades are pretty good, you're going to be all right. So I had a lot of students really, really worried about, I'm not smart enough, I don't have good enough grades, etc. But really, if you just focus on doing what you do and do a really good audition, a really good pre-screening tape, you're going to be just fine. With that being said, though, there's nothing that can hurt you by having good grades. So you definitely should, work as hard as you can and make sure that you give them a compelling case for why you should be able to go to their school. So some conservatories like Eastman are part of a larger university, like the University of Rochester now, and then some conservatories are kind of standalone, like Juilliard or Manhattan School of Music. And so you really have to be sure of what the academic requirements are for the university portion, because some schools you have to get accepted to the university separate from the actual music school. So just make sure you know beforehand what those kind of requirements are. So one thing that all the jazz majors like myself are dealing with at this time of year is getting ready to record their pre-screening tapes. So if you don't know what a pre-screening tape is, it's just a CD that you might send in before with a certain number of tunes on it or pieces that kind of pre-qualify you for the live audition. So you have to make sure that you check each school's repertoire and really think about what you're going to play and how you can combine them together to really work most effectively on the tunes. Certain schools are very open in what they want. I know when I applied to the Manhattan School of Music, it said 10 jazz tunes in contrasting styles. So I had the freedom to be able to choose 10 that I wanted. Whereas at the Juilliard School, they have a very specific list that you have to check, and they change it every year. So you want to make sure that you're picking tunes from their list. That being said, you can kind of adjust your practicing to include some of the tunes that maybe are required for one school and make them work for another. That way, you're working most effectively with your time. I know this sounds super simple, but you got to play what they want to hear. Even if you think you have a great original tune, maybe it's better to play something that you know that the faculty will know and they'll appreciate that you took the time to learn for your audition. You also want to make sure you pick tunes that put yourself in a good light. If a certain tune maybe fits in a different key, make sure you play it in a key that's good for you and good for your instrument. So when you're putting together the recordings, make sure you pay attention to the small details. If they ask for like a certain number of choruses of blues, for example, is it 6 to 8 choruses? Does that 6 to 8 choruses include the melody chorus? Does it not include? Do they want there to be trading on there? Do they not want there to be trading in there? So just be really mindful to pre-plan and figure out exactly what you need and get yourself multiple takes so you can have some options. Also, sometimes schools will specify the key or the tempo, so make sure you get your metronome out, and if they want it at 200, make sure it's at 200. You don't want to give them an easy reason to count you out. The last thing for this pre-screening is that you want to make sure that you label it right. Some schools want you to write the name of all the songs on a label or just right on the CD, or maybe they just want you to put your name and have an accompanying sheet that has all the information about the different tunes. And make sure that it looks nice when you send it in. If it's on a crumpled piece of paper, that doesn't give them a good reason to think that, you're a hardworking professional student. You really want to try to put yourself in the best light you can the first time that they're going to experience listening to you by this pre-screening CD. Sometimes I also get a question about where they should record their pre-screening CD or who they should record with. I think that it's really important to invest a little bit of time and a little bit of money into making sure you have a decent recording. You don't want there to be, an audience in the background and plates clinking and people laughing, all that stuff. Even though maybe it's more convenient to play it at a gig, it's not going to give you exactly what you want for the pre-screening tape. So what I would recommend is getting together with some people that you're really familiar playing with, work on the tunes, and then get together for a session and where they know that you're gonna, take the time to play your music that has to be for these auditions. For me, I went into a studio and really took the time to, get a basic mix on it all and have a good sound, because I thought it was going to be important to have that for the pre-screening tape. But also, I think a lot of those Zoom recorders or any other little recorder, will give you a really good sound if you don't have the time or resources to get into a studio. But just make sure you check the sound and that you are in the forefront as the soloist and not, the piano if you're the horn player. The other part that sometimes we don't think too much about as a music student auditioning is the actual application and the application essay. So sometimes I know a lot of my students in the past have worried about not being the greatest writer. And, the thing is that once you get to college, almost every school that I've experienced or talked to people that have gone there, they have a freshman writing class or a freshman humanities class where you're going to learn how to write. So all you need to do is tell your story, answer their questions, be grammatically correct, be succinct, and do exactly what they ask. That's all you got to do. So don't worry, it's going to be all right. Think about it. Would you want to read your paper? You don't want it to be garbage. Make sure that it's concise and the appropriate length. Is it a character limit or is it a word limit? Make sure that you're double checking all that stuff. Now, overall application considerations. Don't wait till the last minute to do your application. It's super important for the rest of your life. Why would you wait till the last minute? You got to pay attention to all of the details. Are all your T's crossed and your I's dotted? Can you read it if you're filling it out by hand? Make sure that it's easy for the people receiving your application to process it. You don't want your letter saying you have an audition to go to the wrong place because they couldn't read your address. And the one consideration that is really important about being on time and early with this kind of stuff is the letters of recommendation. Anyone that's going to write you a letter is going to need a little bit of time so that they can really write you a nice letter. If you give it to them 2 days beforehand, it's not going to work out. They're going to have to quickly type up a letter for you, and it's not going to be as good as if you give them 2-3 weeks to really get it together. So as someone that's written the letters and also that asked for letters, I know that it's really appreciated when you give people enough time to write the letter how they want to. And the very last thing is don't be late. Send it in by the deadline. So with all those things in mind, I want to wish everybody good luck on their applications, and I'm sure everybody's going to do very well and take the time to make sure that their applications are perfect condition before they send them in. Now, to continue kind of on that vein, the next part, after you've completed the pre-screening and you get accepted and you go for your live audition. Now, every school's live audition is going to be different, and there's no way for me to tell you exactly how it's going to be, but I just wanted to give you a few suggestions of things that I think are important when you're preparing for your audition. The first thing is to schedule and plan out the time that you're going to be there before you get there. If you need to travel, maybe you need a hotel, flights. For me, I think it's important to get there with time to be comfortable. So to me, that means maybe getting there the night before, knowing how you're going to get from where you're staying to the audition, just so you can feel comfortable when you get there. Make sure you have time to warm up and all that stuff. You don't want to be flying by the seat of your pants on a really important day in your life. Another thing to think about is how you look. If you show up in ripped jeans and a t-shirt, are the faculty likely to take you that seriously? Probably not. You want to be yourself, but you definitely want to look presentable and professional to the faculty and to everyone of the administrators you're going to meet and the other students. You just want to give off a good vibe. Obviously, you want to be prepared with all the written materials if you need copies of your application, copies of tunes that you're playing, or copies of scores for the faculty that will be evaluating your audition. If you need copies of tunes for the rhythm section that you're playing with, are they in the right key? All these kinds of things. Just make sure everything's squared away before you get there. Another suggestion might be to get to know the faculty and who they are, their reputation, what they've done before you get there. It's always nice to know a little bit about the people that you're going to be talking to. You can ask them questions and get to know them if you get the chance, passing them in the hallway or different things like that. So taking the time to get to know the people that you're going to be working with, hopefully, if you get accepted, can go a long way in giving off a good impression. Universities aren't just looking for the most gifted students that can play everything already. They're looking for students that are open to learning. They're looking for students with open minds and that are gifted with musical talents. I would also suggest that you try to be prepared for more than just what's on the piece of paper for the requirements. I know for me as a jazz musician, sometimes maybe you'll get asked to play tunes in another key, at another tempo, in another situation, meaning maybe usually you play it with the drums, the bass, and the piano. Maybe they ask, why don't you just play it by yourself, a cappella, without the rhythm section? Or sometimes they might ask you to do other things like chord identification with ear training. Know if there's any special things that you need to have prepared for these auditions. Like, for example, at Juilliard, they require that you play a piece, because I play trombone, with a plunger mute. So that was one thing that I had to be aware of, is being prepared to play that piece with the plunger mute. At Eastman, you have to take the separate classical audition before you do the jazz audition, so you have to have both of those things together. Now, aside from the playing portion, some schools will have you actually do an interview with the administration and maybe some of the faculty. Just trying to get to know who you are as a person, as a student. Are you a good fit for the school? It'd be a great idea for you to consider a few simple questions and how you might answer them. Like, tell us about yourself. How are you going to answer that question? What are you looking for in a music school? What are you looking for in a teacher? Have a few questions together that you might want to ask them, and not about when will you tell me when we're going to get accepted, or what are the scholarships like. Those are important considerations, but try to ask questions that are actually about the program, about the school, and be informed about the things that they do, so that you can have a good conversation with those people and put yourself in the best light you can. Now, each school that you audition at is going to have a different environment, and you have to be prepared for any situation. Some schools will have a big entourage there to greet you, and some it'll be a modest table and a few people, and they'll direct you to where you need to go. But either way, you should try to be as cordial as you can and just go with the flow. Don't forget that just because you're nervous, you still got to be kind and nice to people. You don't want little things getting back somehow, like, oh, yeah, that person was rude to me when I was trying to show them their practice room. These little things do matter, so just take into consideration to try to breathe and be relaxed for the audition. My teacher always told me that an audition is just a snapshot of your musical skills on that day. That's all it is. It's not the end-all be-all, and who knows what path you might go down, whether you get into the school you think you want to go to or you don't. Maybe the school that you don't want to go to is actually the best school for you to end up at. You never know, where life is going to lead you, and just be open to all the possibilities. So for my audition experience, I recommend this is checking out schools the year before, if you have the time. I took trips to Texas, to the University of North Texas, to check them out. University of Miami. I went with a former teacher of mine to Youngstown State University. I was taking some lessons at Eastman because I grew up in Rochester, so I was kind of around that atmosphere. And I came down to New York to visit the schools here. So when you do that, you can kind of get an idea of where you might want to audition, certain kind of programs, the different academic requirements that might be involved. And that way you can narrow down which applications you want to focus on in the year that you're going to take the auditions. So for me, I applied to the Eastman School of Music, Manhattan School of Music, and Juilliard for my undergrad. Just those three, because those were my focuses, and is where I felt like I would fit in the best. So having that focus, allowed me to kind of get together all the stuff that I needed to without having to worry about superfluous information. I took time to record a good pre-screening tape for each, went into a studio and got great musicians to play with, make sure everything was right, because it's important. You want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. And then even more specifically for my master's degree, I knew that I wanted to come to New York, so I decided I was going to apply to the schools that were in New York. So I applied to the Manhattan School and to Juilliard. So my audition experiences have been mostly with those conservatory type schools, where there's also extra considerations when you're going there for the audition, including maybe the theory tests or history tests, trying to just get a background knowledge about what where you stand in terms of their program. So I hope that a little bit of this information has been helpful to you in just kind of being prepared for your auditions coming up, and I wish you all the best of luck. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.